In this video, we're going to be going over the switch axe basics. Now, this is going to be kind of a longer video as I'm more keen on switch axe than I am pretty much other weapons and every other weapon in the game. But we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. The most important thing you need to understand about switch axe is reading this gauge. This gauge right here is the basic baseline of skill for switch axe. You need to understand exactly what it does, why it does it, and when it does it. So the first thing, we'll look at the top yellow bar of your switch gauge, or I end up calling it sword gauge a lot. But this gauge right here, it dictates how much you can attack while in sword mode. When it's below this 30% marker right here, you cannot swap from axe to sword mode without suffering a reload animation penalty. Something you want to be aware of as much as possible. We'll just showcase it really quickly here for you. So we're swinging in axe or sword mode, sorry, using up our meter up here. And as we get on closer down and we reach that 30 percentile mark, what seems to happen whenever we swing again in sword mode, it's fine. But if we're in axe mode and we try to swap back into sword mode below this little marker here, we're going to suffer that penalty. And you'll see exactly what I mean by how long it is when you just see this. So let's say we're swinging in axe mode. We don't have that bar up. We hit R2 to swap back. Oof. You go through what's called the reload animation to get your bar back up past this threshold here. This is very important. This is something that even experienced players like myself still suffer from. In the heat of a fight, you're trying to read the monster. You don't really have a full amount of time to, keep up with your bars and stuff. You try your best, but you still make mistakes, right? This is something you're constantly going to be struggling with. Just try your best to do better about, keeping up with that and making sure you don't hit that reload animation. That's loss of DPS. That's chances to cart if a big hit is coming your way because you are literally locked in animation with that. Now, moving on. The gauge to the lower left of the switch gauge here is your power axe mode. This lets you know that power axe is on or off. Now, in power axe mode, your axe attacks are going to be doing more damage and your switch gauge is going to be filled a bit quicker. We'll get into a little bit more of that later, but optimally, you're going to want this up when you're doing combos so that you can swap back into sword mode for more damage more often. So, visual indicators for power axe mode. Let's see what we got here. So, this is normal axe mode. This is what you're going to be doing to actually build this yellow gauge up. The more enemies you hit, basically you're going to be building up your yellow gauge so you can swap back into sword mode. Now, if you're in power axe mode, which is done by hitting circle, circle, triangle, do this overhead swing, and as you can see, the axe is lit up now. And also this portion of your gauge is lit up. This is your indicator to let you know you're in power axe mode. When this is active, this gauge fills up much faster. Now, we'll get into combos later into the video of how to raise this gauge optimally. But just know that every attack in power axe mode is going to raise it more than if you're not in power axe mode. You also do a little bit more damage. And I believe part damage is increased as well. It was in Worlds. I think that carried over, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Now, past this, we have a third portion of the gauge here on the bottom right. So the bar on the bottom right of the switch gauge is your amp gauge. Attacks in sword mode are going to raise this gauge, and once it reaches max, you're in what's called an amp state. Your sword will glow and your attacks will not be deflected by hard parts of enemies. Basically, it's called mind's eye in Monster Hunter when your swings won't be deflected. Now, I'll just give you a visual showcase of what this looks like really quickly. You can build this gauge on small enemies if you don't want to build it on or bigger enemies, but generally speaking, you want to kill it as fast as possible, so go fight the big ones. But for this showcase sake, we'll show this. Also, and as you can see, I just ran out of my sword mode right there and automatically switched back into axe mode, so we'll just show this as well. You can build it up quickly by getting into power axe mode and then just spamming triangle. You're going to do an ability called Spiral Burst Slash, and if that hits the corpse or the enemy that you're fighting, it's going to build that gauge up a lot. Anyway, let's get back into building up this amp gauge here. Takes a few circle spams. That's generally what people do. They'll spam the circle combo until they get it built up. But as you can see, we are now in amp state mode. So your sword's glowing, this is glowing, and you have, I haven't really counted it, but I'm guessing about 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds of this amp gauge being up. Now it will get depleted depending on the moves that you are going to be using. We're going to showcase that as well. But that is essentially the gauges that you need to understand how they work, what they do, etc. Now we're going to move into how to play with switch axe. So axe and sword mode have radically different play styles. In axe mode, you're going to be very mobile. Your dodges are longer, you're going to move faster, your attacks are going to basically be lunging you forward. They can lunge you backwards. It's great for comboing damage and actually escaping damage as well. You see a big move coming. Oh God, I got to get out of the way. Boom, you can do this. You can hit while you dodge, essentially. I'm a big fan of the overhead slash into the fade slash as well. Like, there's all sorts of different abilities you can go with. Those are my bread and butters that I like to use. Now, in sword mode, this is basically when you're planted in front of a monster and it's time to do some real damage. Now, as you can see, you can't really roll that fast. It's not like axe mode. If you can see the movement, you're very slow. You can still dodge attacks. It's just to a lesser degree of safety. You do have access to some pretty solid burst damage when you're in amp state, though. Now, optimally, depending on the fight, you're going to be wanting to switch between axe mode and sword mode mid-fight using R2. Now, I say mid-fight because if you do it while standing still, this is kind of an animation lock right here. But if you're in mid-swing, boom, mid-roll, for instance, hit R2, you morph out, morph back, morph back, morph back. I'm just hitting R2 right now, and it's doing these things. Different combos will give you different outcomes. So let's say we're doing the axe building combo by spamming triangle. 1, 2, 3, R2, double swing. There's a multitude of different things you can morph into. You need to test this yourself, see what you're most comfortable with. But what I just showed you, the 3 triangles into R2, is a very good combo to start with. It's going to build your sword gauge up very nicely. It's also going to give you a double swing to build your amp gauge up, give you a little jump start on that. And then you can follow into just circle combo from there. Now, you're going to be swapping a lot mid-combat. It's going to be very confusing at first, but you're going to need to know what does what. You're going to card a lot, experimenting with things. Don't worry about that. Just keep trying and find out what's best for you. Now, speaking of monsters that we're going to be fighting, you need to also understand where your position is as a switch axe player. Now, I know a lot of people are brand new to Monster Hunter, and that's why I'm going to kind of go over this section right here. If you're playing a sword or anything that's slicing damage, typically speaking, not 100% of the time, typically speaking, you want to hang out towards the legs and tail area of a monster. Okay, you're doing slicing damage. You want to try to cut that tail. That's kind of your quote-unquote job. You don't really want to hit the head 100% of the time. Obviously, this changes with file damage and depending on the file that you're using, etc. This does change, but I'm speaking on a basic general level. You're going to be wanting to attack tails. You're going to be wanting to attack legs to topple, or wings even, if you can reach them. Things of that nature, because most of the damage coming from, say, hammers or hunting horns, etc., the blunt damage is going to be focused on the head of the monster. So know your role when you're playing these weapons so you don't, piss off your teammates or get them staggered and possibly carded. In the beginning, this is going to be very important because no one's going to have flinch free in the very beginning of the game. That's what stops you from being staggered from other players. So just be mindful of that in the beginning of the game. Later on, once you get more experienced, obviously you'll figure out and know what to do, right? But that's basically the gist of how to play switch axe. Now we're going to go over combos. Now, the combos that I've been discussing so far have been pretty basic, but they are kind of your bread and butter. So, as I was saying earlier, in axe mode, you're going to be wanting to do the spiral axe combo to build your sword gauge up, right? Now, if you have your sword gauge, like, I don't know, 75, 80% or more, go ahead and swap into sword mode and just use it up a little bit, right? But if you're looking to raise your sword gauge up or your switch gauge up a bit, you're going to be in axe mode. And we'll go over those combos right now. The bread and butter combos, not every combo, but the bread and butter combos you're going to be using. Spiral axe is just triple triangle. That's it. I am playing on a PlayStation 5 controller. So if you're playing with other controllers, it's going to be different for you. If you're playing on mouse and keyboard, it's going to be different for you as well. But essentially, triangle, triangle, triangle. Now you have to hit something with this to build your gauge. You can't just swing willy-nilly and, you know, build your gauge on the wind. You have to hit things. Now, remember, if you are in power axe mode, remember circle, circle, triangle. This is another thing you need to learn. A full triangle combo while in power axe mode will fill that gauge up really far. Like that's kind of where you go to with this. And also, as I was saying earlier, some other moves for mobility with axe. If you move your stick forward, back, anywhere, and you hit circle, you're going to be doing a lunging overhead attack. And if you hold back after any attack, so if I do a regular swing and hold back and hit circle, you do a fade slash. This fade slash will save you so much. It has saved me from carding multiple times. It's one of the best moves in the game, in my opinion. Fade slash will do a little bit of damage and will also get you to safety if needed. Something to keep in mind whenever you're playing in axe mode. Now we're going to move to sword mode combos. Now, these aren't very complicated to do. Pretty much when you're in sword mode, the only thing you're going to be paying attention to is how many more times you can swing while in sword mode and this amp gauge. You want that amp gauge to be full and you want to basically be able to swing your sword to use that amp gauge. So what we're going to do, we're going to mess with this Chatacabra here a little bit and just kind of showcase a little bit of this. So we're going to go ahead and build our sword gauge up completely. Okay. We're going to get ourselves into axe mode. So we have power axe mode active. We're full sword. What's the deal here? Now we just hit R2, swap into sword mode and start building up that gauge. Use your focus to realign yourself. If you're swinging the wrong way, you can use focus to turn around the right way. L2 for that. So now that we're in amp state, it's time to do a little bit of damage. Now, depending on the openings that you're going to be getting, you can keep using your circle combo or any other combo, but we're going to be using elemental discharge. With that, you're going to hold triangle and circle, and this is going to give you zero-sum discharge at first. We'll showcase this. What this does, it latches onto the enemy, and then you keep spamming triangle and you blow yourself back like that. Now there's two different modes to this. I'm going to showcase both of them. You just saw the first one. That was a big getting up on your feet animation. So what we're going to do, show you a better way to do zero-sum discharge. Swap back into sword mode, get hit, lose our amp state because, you know, that's the right way to do things. Let's build back up our amp state here. Now, as this is up, we're going to latch back into the monster. And as we're spamming triangle, we're going to hit back and triangle at the same time. And as you can see, we landed on our feet and we're instantly back in the action instead of landing on our back. That's a big difference that you really need to pay attention to if you're doing zero-sum discharge. You can be attacked while in zero-sum discharge. It can get you killed. You need to be very careful of that. Now, our sword gauge is a little bit low. Let's go ahead and build this baby back up. We don't have power axe mode active, but we're close enough to full where we're not going to really worry about that. So we're going to build this up to full. We're going to swap back over to this, and we're just going to do a regular elemental discharge, which is not holding triangle and circle, but therefore spamming it. And when you get done here, if you hold R2, you do this number. Now, that's a full release slash right there. Now, we'll go over it one more time for everyone just to bring it home and let you know what's going on here. We're going to get into power axe mode since our sword gauge is pretty low, and we're going to spam triangle. Look how much this baby goes up. pretty much half a gauge. And then we miss because we miss. All right, now that this is full, let's build up our gauge again, and we'll showcase this one more time. Now, there are combos and clashes and things like that that you need to learn as well. I'm going to go over that in a general basics guide because all weapons need to know these things. So anyway, we're doing elemental discharge, spamming triangle, getting hit, so I can't show this off right now. Let's get back up there. Usually on bigger monsters, you want to be in a safe moment to do things like this. Not like I'm doing right now, making a fool of myself, but you know, is what it is. We'll swing this and get our sword gauge built back up. This is the nuance that you're gonna have to deal with when playing Switch Axe from time to time. I'm also trying to talk while I do this, so I'm not the greatest at this. All right, got this built back up. Now let's build this sword gauge right back up. All right, now that it's built back up, we got him knocked down. Perfect opportunity. Elemental discharge. Triangle, circle, and then start spamming triangle. Then hold R2. He's running away, but if he wasn't running away, we would have nailed him with that. That's your big damage swing with, or big damage combo while in amp state on Switch Axe. Now, you can also follow that up again with triangle, and that'll do your spiral slash. If you noticed, our gauges were full. Now they've been used up. When you use elemental discharge and you follow it with that full bridal charge slash by holding R2, that is going to chew through your resources big time. So you need to rebuild everything right back up. So you want to follow up your R2 holding the bridled slash attack, the charge one. You want to follow that up with triangle. So you follow it up with a spiral axe and it starts to build that gauge back up. Well, howdy. But anyway, that's essentially the basics of Switch Axe, and it's not really super complicated, but it kind of is at the same time if you don't know what you're doing. Anyways, with that being said, I do hope that you've enjoyed this video. I didn't delve into the nitty-gritty portions of Switch Axe as I want this to be kind of accessible to brand new players and not really super overwhelming. Monster Hunter is a very, very deep game. Every weapon has small aspects to it that aren't really explained in the game very well, but have big game-changing aspects to it. This guide is meant as a basic starter guide. I hope this video helps you along your way to mastering your Switch Axe. It's a favorite weapon of mine of the 14, and I'll definitely be using it on release quite a bit. Now, with that being said, every week until release, I'm going to be releasing a basics guide for a different weapon. All 14 until the game releases on February 28th. If you would like more, subscribe to the channel. We'll be posting more Monster Hunter content, short form and long form, on the channel for a while to come. With that said, I thank you for watching. Good luck on the hunts.